Executive session. Can we get a motion to return to public session?
Move.
Can we get a second? Thank you. Call to order. Opening statement. Meetings of the board are open to the public and all members of the community should feel free to participate. There are two opportunities for the public to speak. The first is at the beginning of the meeting for agenda items only, and the second is at the end of the meeting for other items. Any individual desiring to speak shall give his or her name, address, and the group, if any, that is represented. The presentation shall be as brief as possible, but no more than 3 minutes per individual. There are certain matters that may be brought before the board that cannot be immediately addressed in public. Such matters may be referred by the president to the board committee and or to the superintendent for consideration and or resolution. The board vests in its president or other presiding officer authority to terminate the remarks of any individual if he or she deems it in the best interest of those present to do so. Roll call, Michael.
Mr. Reddy.
Here.
Mr. Wall.
Here.
Mrs. Briamonte.
Here.
Mrs. Zhang.
Here.
Dr. Kalur.
Here.
Mrs. Tassilo.
Here.
Mr. Buckley.
Here.
Mr. Damari.
Here.
Mr. Mann.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Michael. Can we rise for flag salute? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So, welcome to our August meeting, 1 week before school starts next week. I saw some kids in the neighborhood and I sort of screamed at them a little bit as the B guy was at my house along with the septic guy. So it was a very fun afternoon after seeing all you folks this morning. And the kids were very excited to come back to school. I think we had a lot of Village and Indian Hill kids running around. So thanks for everyone coming tonight. Teachers, welcome. This is sort of a big night, especially for those first job. This is pretty cool. I remember first job in the military is going, wow, I'm now have to serve in the Army. This is crazy. So we've all been there. So congratulations. You are our only presentation tonight. So hopefully it won't be that long. I mean, it's 7:15, so apologize that we're a few minutes late. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Cascone to welcome you formally to the district.
Thank you, President Reddy. Good evening, members of the Board of Education, administration, staff, and members of the community. It is that exciting time of the year as we bring our summer recess to a close and prepare to commence another school year. This week, the school district administration and staff have been engaging in what I would refer to as training camp. The district administration convened an all-day planning retreat on Monday to finalize preparations for the first day for staff and students. And today we conducted the second of a 3-day new staff orientation program. Shortly, we will officially welcome our new professional educators to the district, and I am excited to introduce them to the community. Also this week, our schools have been conducting orientation programs, for example, for rising 7th and 9th graders, and our high school scholastic athletic teams have been hard at work scrimmaging and preparing for the opening of their seasons. On the first day of school, September 6th, I will officially launch and disseminate the district strategic action plan. You will note on tonight's agenda, the district will vote to approve the 2023-24 district goals, which were highly informed by the strategic plan. In some of my social media posts, as well as my community letter from today, I have called attention to the positive behavioral support program, which we will launch this year, which we have named Live Homedale Blue, and which is founded on the values of respect, fairness, responsibility, and citizenship. We look forward to coming together as a community to holistically embrace these values, as we know they can only contribute to the most supporting, safe, and thus highly achieving schools and school district. I'd like to extend a special thanks to our buildings and grounds and technology departments for their incredible and Herculean efforts over the course of the summer. Projects and final cleaning are continuing, but our Director of Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Stromlin, has assured me that the buildings will be open and looking better than ever. So I'd like to take this opportunity to wish our community all the best for a safe and restful Labor Day weekend and look forward to seeing everyone next week. And with that, we will transition into our annual and official welcome and introduction of our new professional educators and staff. I had an opportunity to spend some time with our new folks today. I played the role of Homedale tour guide as we did our bus tour throughout the district. This is an annual tradition with our new teacher orientation, which was great because I actually learned in my process of preparation a few interesting facts about the township. And I think it was a great opportunity for our new staff to get acquainted with what is truly an exceptional community, rich in history and scientific and academic achievement. So with that, I'm going to come up to the podium. Folks, I'm going to call you up by school. And if when I call you up, you would just join the board president and I up here at our backdrop, we'll take a picture and officially welcome you to our community. Mr. President. Education teacher. Eileen Deladone, learning disabilities teacher consultant. Manisha Deshpande, kindergarten teacher. Kristen Frothingham, social studies and science teacher. Robert Griffith, custodian. Kristen Gricci, speech language specialist. Jillian Hunt, first grade teacher, temporary leave replacement. Erica Kruger, first grade teacher. And Catherine Smith, TLR art teacher. How about a round of applause for our village folks? And now from Indian Hill. Amy Deutschmeister, fifth grade special ed teacher, TLR. Lindsay Gallo, school nurse. Angela Jesmaria, physical education teacher. Christina Gradsky, fourth grade special ed teacher, TLR. Mary Paglio, fourth grade math teacher, TLR. Lauren Simeone, guidance counselor. Victoria Sullivan, fourth grade math teacher. Brian Schifano, sixth grade math teacher, TLR. And Haley Weinstein, sixth grade science teacher. Give it up for Indian Hill. At William R. Satz, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Paul Christopher, our interim principal. Dr. Christopher. And Anne Simone, French world language teacher. Now, I have to give a special shout out to Madame Simone. So I threw the gauntlet down to Madame Simone during the new teacher orientation. One of the questions we asked as one of the icebreakers was, if you were going to sing a karaoke song, what would you sing? And so I went to Madame Simone and I said, maybe you should sing an Edith Piaf song. And by golly, she did it. And she stole the show. So that took a lot of guts. So I appreciate that. So we'll give it up for Satz. And our high school. Okay, Brian Adams, special education teacher. I'd hoped Brian would be here. He was planning on performing Cuts Like a Knife, but unfortunately he's not here. Different Brian Adams, but I'm sure he would not have appreciated the joke. His answer to the karaoke song was any song not by Brian Adams. Heather Bahal, secretary to the assistant principal. Wow. Marissa Clark, business teacher. Amy DeFelice, science teacher. Alexander Johnson, social studies teacher. Salvatore Leonardi, custodian. Michael Moore, math teacher. Ryan Parker, special education teacher. And assistant principal 7 through 12 for school counseling, Casey Risatello. And then we also have on the district level, we have Christina Dimicino, who's a social worker that will be working at Indian Hill, WR SATS, and the high school. We have our new K through 12 supervisor of mathematics and business education, Ms. Gwendolyn Lauder. And we have two school-based clinicians who are not necessarily new to the district. They were working with us through Rutgers, but we're very happy to have onboarded them as our own employees. And they will be serving as clinicians at Vincent Marone will be at Village and Indian Hill, and Michelle Rybrick will be at SATS and the high school. So just a couple of thoughts. Again, in congratulations, I can assure you that all of the folks here who are joining us went through extremely rigorous application and qualification process to arrive here. In a day and age when school districts are really wrestling and struggling with teacher shortages and staff shortages, Homedale continues to draw outstanding recruiting classes, which I think speaks to the quality of the district, and we are so pleased to welcome you again. Thank you. At this time, I know you're anxiously awaiting my presentation on HIB tomorrow. So feel free to take your leave. Have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, folks. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. We have refreshments for you. My fault. Mr. Reddy, did you want to recess briefly to do a little?
Yes, we can recess.
Okay.
5 minutes, 10 minutes. This
So
way you
please
guys can go
join
home
us
and get
for
up.
refreshments
Yeah.
and have an opportunity to interact with our board and get to know them a bit.
Walk around, stretch out. have the gavel, but like to use it, so might as well. Brings us to the report of the student representatives, which we don't have one because they're not here. They will be here next month. Report of the superintendent, I think we already got it, right?
That's correct.
I'll
That's
count
correct,
that as
President
your
Reddy. Thank
report.
you.
Thank you. HIB, we have that information, so you have read that to us.
There is actually no HIB report for this evening.
Thank you. Brings us to questions or comments from the public on action items only. Mr. Dowd, yes, sir.
Test. There we go. Sean T. Dowd, 12 Primrose Court. I just wanted to make a comment. I've been paying attention to all the committee and board meetings over the summer. And just as a district member, as well as a parent and community member, I love the committee of the whole discussions. And I know there's been some back and forth that it does take a long time, but having read committee minutes over many years, 20 years here, and seeing actual conversations and discussion and debate, it's been healthy and transparent. So I'm a big fan of that. I hope you continue doing that. In that light, my action item for today is, I know there's been discussion about all the first readings and second readings of things. And just as a parent, as well as a community member, but also as a teacher who teaches English in the district, I would just ask for the same transparency, I guess, based on the logistics of how the board and the district and everybody else does business. Item number 5, where all the first readings are done, specifically the one controversial issues. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's kind of call out the elephant in the room. We live in very divisive times politically and a lot of other things. I read through what's listed currently, I guess, on the first reading. I think it would be nice if even only to hear a conversation at the committee of the whole meeting about what the board, what the district, what parents consider to be controversial issues. Because I know as a policy, it's got to be a little broad, but I think a conversation with some of the things that parents have been coming up and concerned about, whether it's health ed, whether it's books and things like that, I think let's put it on the table what we are considering to be controversial, because I think that's going to be a healthy part of the conversation as somebody that teaches 2 different grade levels, where we do touch on some things that I don't necessarily see as controversial, because I look at them big picture, both sides holistically. And there are legitimate concerns on both sides of the fence about how teachers and how parents discuss those things with the children at different grade levels. So I would just like to see, as somebody who's a fan of the committee discussions, maybe clarify what the current board and what the district
food, the one that speaks to the food, where we were gonna pencils and stickers for birthdays and no food. Can we review so the public is clear? what the changes are, and is that included in the new draft in the packet?
Sure. So the policy as written and presented for a second reading does allow for outside food to be brought into school under two conditions, which are outlined within the policy. One is that food either has to be provided from the food services provider or come from the approved district list of healthy snacks, which are not listed in the policy, but are reflected within the student handbooks. And those are incorporated into this revision to the policy.
The other item, Board President, is item 33 in this roll call. Do you want to discuss it now, talk about it separately, or what's your preference?
I think it's okay to talk about it now. Any objections? No? Let's talk about item 33.
Whichever you.
Terrence, real quick with the policies, can I comment on the policies
Of
before we do that
course.
so we don't go back and forth on the controversial issues, just to put on the record, because it's not changed here that the board is going to be involved in the approval. Just that's going to be changed.
Sure.
In the second reading.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's already been subsequent to the feedback being received pursuant to our conversation at the last board meeting. That edit has been made, but is not reflected in this first reading document, but will be reflected in the second reading document when it's moved forward in September.
All right. And then the comment on Mr. Dowd's comments, which I appreciate. I don't know how it could work, but if we can potentially consider getting feedback from teachers and staff. I know Mr. Dowd had mentioned some things that he might not think are controversial, but it'd be good to hear that, what those specifics are in the classroom, or also some history of things that have come up in recent years that have been some issues. So I don't know if some sort of that could be dealt with in the policy committee, maybe.
Sure. There's nothing, preventing the policy committee to post and provide sort of advanced access to the public and staff to prospective changes to a policy, in order to help inform any subsequent deliberations before moving that policy forward for approval. So that is something that we could do, public input, put those policies out to the community for feedback. Absolutely.
To the staff community.
Yep. If certainly to the staff. Absolutely.
Okay, but the community at whole, you're thinking to get comments and feedback?
If that were the board's, perspective, yeah.
Okay,
We could do that.
thank you.
Yeah, if I may add to that, I think that's very valuable. And I do agree. And I made a comment that controversial issues is very subjective with, different groups having different ideas. So I think taking input from teachers and community rather than just our subjective opinions would be good at large, because that's what we want to go by. I also want to add that in this wellness policy that I'm going to approve, I do want to make some substantial changes with caveats such as posting nutritional values of the food items and having more nutritional items and consistently, like on a promotional basis once a week. And hopefully we'll add that to the next revision of the policy. So based on that, I'll say yes today.
Yeah, I think with Sarika had a couple of questions this week, which I think were great. Like, on the wellness in terms of having student representatives to give feedback to the district and to the administration saying, hey, why don't we do this or this? Because they're the ones that are actually eating the food and they're the consumers and the customers. So I think it's a great idea. And the only thing I would say on all these policies is after the board approves them, we could always come back to them next month, 3 months from now, a year from now, if there's something in there that we know needs to be changed, like we talked about before about cell phone usage that has changed 10 years ago to now. So there's nothing that prevents us, even if we approve these a second reading next month, we could come back in December and, reopen and relook at if the policy committee goes through something and says, wow, this is totally out of whack of current time. Maybe 10 years ago is a different story. So that's absolutely the board's prerogative to do that. So as much as, we need to get these back going, it's almost like, I guess, policy is basically how we speak essentially as a board. So at least it's here, because there's still other things that are going to come up. The administration of us will have to deal with, but at least this generally at least sets the baseline and the, how we are more marching orders, you might say. So cool. Did you want to do 33? You would.
Sure. If everyone's
everyone's-
done on policies. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks. Just briefly, I wrote a couple quick notes, so I keep it short. Item 33 is approval of salary non-affiliated administrators and staff for the 2023-2024 school year. I've mentioned this in the past and in past years that the compensation process is broken. I've shared this recently, and I've really shared this each year since I've been on the board. It's a key driver of ever increasing taxes, whether it's a collective bargaining agreement or it's affiliated or non-affiliated. The 3.2% raises that are put forth here are 60% higher than our 2% cap. With a fixed percentage instead of a variable, my belief is that you can look at this as long as it's reasonable and with the different lens, as it were. When you have a fixed percentage instead of variable, the underpaid staff continue to be underpaid, and the high range folks continue to expand that differential. So I think this needs to be totally and completely reviewed and improved for all parties. I had also requested that the board wait another month so they can at least read all the contracts that they received on Monday. And I would just ask, if you haven't read them, that you're not ready to vote. And this includes the value of very important benefits that are worthy benefits through the teachers' pension annuity fund, lifetime medical insurance, and other benefits that I think the board should at least understand and be coherent in when they're discussing these, particularly as it relates to the budget. The 2024 budget, I think we all agree on this one, will be under extraordinary pressure, and a primary reason is the salary on scales never seen before, and particularly the new health insurance legislation that was passed by Trenton. The key item to know in that is that traditionally there was a percentage of the premium paid by a staff member, right? That was flipped on its head in a method that a prior senior staff member said was unsustainable, and it's true because I ran the numbers. Instead of a percentage of the premium, all of the additional trend, and if you're in the corporate world in Homedale or you're familiar with benefits, the increasing trend, maybe 7 to 12% depending, prescription costs 15 to 20% in some cases, spiking, especially with non-formulary meds, Hep C, different things of that nature. That increase in trend is paid for by the taxpayers in Homedale. What that means is that there's an intersection between compensation where labor attorneys typically tell you the range is 3% or the average is 2% or the average is 4%, whatever that number is. That logic is obliterated with the new health insurance legislation. So it's a little bit dry and maybe a little bit dull, but it's the key driver to that tax bill that people see every year. So to wrap up, that's a primary reason why I think we need to look at the way we're doing this, because the health insurance legislation, again, is out of Trenton, but it's not sustainable. So looking to 2024, my view is to finally see fairness and equity in the contracts that respect all of the employees and also respect the taxpayers who fund the salaries of every staff member that's in this room. And that's why I'm not voting favorably on that, because I'm not clear on how I can better send the message that the structure is busted. And after this meeting, whichever the board chooses to do is fine. But this has to be addressed in a structural way because the budgets are unsustainable. And we want to just collectively, regardless of how this goes together this evening, get this fixed and be a model, not just for Homedale, but for other districts, because they don't understand the intersection of the health insurance legislation, the unsustainable trend that's on the backs of the taxpayers, and we just simply need to fix it. And that's minimally my request, regardless of the outcome of the vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Terrence.
I want to
Chris?
comment on that. Terrence, thanks for the valid points, and especially being a new board member and new to this approval process. Joining the board, we got put into a mix here with some out of control expenses that we had to vote in. I believe it was our biggest increase, right? Our biggest increase ever in Homedale. And when we did that, I mentioned we either have to make some tough decisions at that moment, which we didn't, or we're going to have tougher decisions to make in the future. And that's going to continue. That trend isn't going to stop. So Terrence's points are extremely valid. And it is a challenge as a board member, respecting our teachers and staff, which we appreciate and we want to do the best for them, and also respecting our community. There was we got a lot for that increase, and we will continue to. Community members are really concerned about that. So I do feel like we should maybe consider tabling this again to do some more due diligence on this and communicate this, because we've got to do something about this budget. That's a fact. So thank you, Terrence, for that.
I have a question too. As Chris said, new board member. pertaining to the legislature and specifically at item 33, is there what's the speculation as far as a, fix would be to the increases that we're facing? Is there what as far as you could see, what is sort of the roadmap to kind of to fix that, if there is one?
If I may, through the board president, Mr. Silva would know about this as well. They have to continually review the process to see where the savings are and to what extent they need to modify the benefit programs to extract a certain level of savings. Initially, it was put forth that it was going to save $600 million, if I recall correctly. That quickly vanished. But perhaps you may have a.
I don't know the numbers
Okay.
of it, but at some point, chapter 44, which is what we're talking about, will sunset. And then it all becomes negotiable again. That's what happened with chapter 78. And then they introduced chapter 44. And I am a union member, but I do agree, because I'm very compartmentalized. It is a hurt on the
Yeah,
district.
it should be personal, not footed by everybody. I
Right.
agree,
So,
yeah.
that being said, and I'm the person that in the first place asked to look at these non-affiliated salaries, because there were those that were above the 3.2% that the teachers got. But now everyone is now at the 3.2%. And I think that moving forward and in my opinion, for the next year, I would love the ability to look at, what did you call it, Terrence? Some structural changes, looking at caps where we need to, just like we did in previous negotiations, moving forward. Do I think that it should preclude me from now, like right now, looking at this fiscal year where people were expecting a raise July 1 to do it right now? Not necessarily, but it is something moving forward. I do think has to change. And I think chapter 44, I don't know exactly when it sunsets, but they have to look at it. And I'm assuming that they're going to realize that it really has not been successful.
And finally, if there is if I was running a business and I had people who were being underpaid and others who were just, getting, a 3.2% on top of, compounding on top of whatever it may be, I'd like to, if we have the capacity to fix that, I think that makes sense to get people up to band, so to speak, where they belong, before we start giving flat increases to everybody. So I think that's a valid point, Terrence.
Thanks, Jeff. I agree, because I know, like Chris said, next year's budget, I can't see it getting any better. And it's a math problem, and the math just doesn't work. I mean, unless we want to go out to, referendum or tax, and vote on, get to that we're going to exceed the budget. That's almost where we're heading, unless these transportation costs and healthcare course just somehow ought to just go down. And I'm pretty sure they're not going to go down. So yeah, I mean, I think Terrence said a few months ago, 12 o'clock might be coming for certain districts at certain times. And, like that, to me, that's, if someone said, what's your biggest fear in this district right now? It's the budget for sure. I mean, I'm grateful to the business office that we have a very good capital reserve and maintenance reserve, but you don't want to liquidate those to nothing for, you need those for a rainy day, whatever happens, or a new chiller or whatever it might be down the road. But yeah, and I agree with Kim, what you're saying is, this year's now, but it's definitely, I think, structural changes. We're gonna have to look at things, be creative, or however people want to say it. It's it's a hurt that everyone has to sort of deal with. So thank you for the conversation. I guess we can vote. I guess before we vote, I guess I have to read the 3 amended motions. So I'll read them in order. Number 65. Motion to amend resolution number 65 to provide for the board's approval of the extension of the appointment dated July 1st, 2023 with Schenck Price, or the law firm of Schenck Price and King, to provide general counsel legal services at the rate of $175 per hour for the period of September 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. And the second will be motion to amend resolution number 66 to provide for the board's approval of the extension of the agreement dated July 1st, 2023 with Schenck Price King to provide labor negotiations legal services at a rate of $175 per hour for the period of September 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. And the last one will be number 67, motion to amend resolution number 67, provide for the board to approve a contract with the law firm of Methesel and Werble to provide special education legal services at the rate of $165 per hour for the period of September 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Mr. Reddy, you need a second to amend those three motions,
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second,
Okay,
and then you need a vote to amend those motions prior to the approval.
okay.
so move.
So,
I move to motion to vote to amend.
yeah, that seems so odd, but
That-
okay, so,
That is the
Second.
process.
okay, thank you.
Second.
So Kim moved, Chris second,
Yep.
and now you need the roll call vote
Um,
to amend that vote.
Okay, can we have a roll call to amend that vote?
Mr. Reddy,
Yes.
Mr. Wall,
Yes.
Mrs. Brio-Monte.
Yes.
Mrs. Zhang,
Yes.
Dr. Kalura,
Yes.
Mrs. DeSillo,
Yes,
Mr. Buckley,
Yes.
Mr. Damari,
Yes.
Mr. Mann.
Yes.
Motion passes to amend.
Thank you. And then the last one I have to read is item number 72, approval of settlements. Whereas the board is a party to a special education due process action before the Office of Administrative Law, hearing agency reference number 2024-36203 and OAL docket number EDS 07382-23. And whereas the parties wish to amicably resolve all outstanding disputes pursuant to the terms presented to the board in the agreement without the necessity of further legal proceedings. Be it resolved that the Board of Education approves settlement agreement and release on the terms and conditions contained therein. And be it resolved that the Board of President may sign the agreement on behalf of the board. Can I have a motion for that? Do we need a motion or we had this as 71, so this would be 72. So I need a motion
move.
and a second. Excellent. So now we can have roll call for all the items. Sir. Okay.
Mr. Reddy,
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Wall,
Yes, with the exception of, on that settlement, I'm a no. And on 33, I'm a no for the reasons I shared earlier. And the one item I just want to mention on the corporal punishment. That item, Board President, if I may briefly, there's a sentence, I just want to make it clear because that's an important policy. The current language is any teaching staff member employed by the board found to have violated this policy will be subject to discipline by this board and may be dismissed for corporal punishment. The change is any teaching staff member employed by the board found to have violated this policy may, instead of will, be subject to discipline by the board, period. So I'm voting no on that. I believe. Yeah, I'm voting no on that. And I believe I think that was it. Yeah. Mr. Patrizio, I think those are all okay. And yes, on the other items. Thank you.
Mrs. Brio-Monte,
Abstaining from 3 and 4 and yes on everything else.
Mrs. Zhang,
Yes.
Dr. Kalura,
Yes.
Mrs. DeSillo,
I'm abstaining from 1 and 2 as I was absent. And I'm a yes for everything else.
Mr. Buckley,
Yes, with the exception of number 33 for some of the reasons that were raised here in discussion. I think that given the exceptional rise in costs, as discussed, the process needs to be revamped so we can stop the bleeding essentially.
Mr. Damari,
I'm a yes on all except 33. I'm a no. And also I can't find it, but on the bills list, I'm a no for the high tops payment.
I apologize. I'm a no as well for that.
I can't seem to find it, so I don't know what bill that is.
Why is that back on?
To revise. The invoice was revised to remove the cost of the elementary presentation, which was we ultimately declined and parted ways with them before they delivered that.
And I appreciate that, Dr. Gascon.
So can I amend my vote as well to decline that payment?
Just that one payment, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I apologize, me as well.
And Mr. Mann,
Yes to all but 33, again, for reasons I cited. And also, no to, I'd like to vote no on high tops as well.
okay, motion passes.
Thank you all. So that brings us to, oops, ow. Any old business any board member would like to discuss? Eileen?
So in some of the emails that received this past week, there was something noted about the wavering process changing for kids to waiver in and out of courses. Normally, this would be discussed in committee. It was not brought up in committee of a whole. So I'm hoping that maybe, Scott, we could touch upon it at the next committee of a whole, just because, and Pete would probably recall, that was like a really hot topic for a very long time here. So I was just, I want the public to know how it's affecting their students and what they need to do. I'm not sure how that information was disseminated, but we just received it in an email. So I just want to make sure the public is aware of any of those changes.
Scott, is any chance we could put you or Dr. Irwin on the spot to give a quick 2-minute summary on, especially for newer board members, what Eileen was saying is a couple years ago for honors classes, specifically in 7th, 8th grade in the high school, there was sometimes an opt-in process. It was sort of like a clandestine opt-in process. You weren't really sure about it, but yet every parent had the ability to opt into Mr. Dowd's honors and the English class if they wanted to, even if the administration said, we don't think you can handle that course of rigor or something like that. So then it became basically a very, okay, here's what the opt-in, opt-out process is. And, there's a whole, line of, steps 1 through 10. You don't go straight from 1 to 10. You have to go through all of them. And then ultimately we had sort of a process. So it was sort of clean. So, parents would understand, hey, if you're putting this kid into this honors chemistry class and you get, you don't do so well, you're warned essentially. So I don't know, Scott, if that's something,
Sure.
if the new process is
Yeah. So I'm
changed in a big way, or
yeah, absolutely. First off, Ms. Bremonti, thanks for the question and happy to share a little information on that. So it is certainly a value that we encourage students taking on challenges, right? And we don't want to sort of squelch that initiative, right? By the same token, we do have very clearly defined criteria that determine whether or not a student qualifies for an honors level. And we do have a waiver process, which, notwithstanding that the student may not have or did not meet the criteria as outlined by the school district, and though it is not necessarily in the professional recommendation of the school district, we do allow parents to fill out a waiver in order for their child to move into that class anyway. Now, just because that happens doesn't change the fact that one of a number of reasons why that student may not have been recommended for movement into honors was because they didn't necessarily possess or have mastered the prerequisite skills that are really necessary going into that class, right? And while certainly at the very beginning of the year, there may be some degree of review and reinforcement. Shortly after the beginning of the year, those classes take off into new territory, instructional and curricular territory, if you will, the success with which is really dependent upon having those prerequisite skills solidified. So one of the things that, and then that really creates a series of sort of push and pull and friction, right? Because, you know, whether in spite of the teacher's best efforts and the student's best efforts, if those gaps aren't closed, that's not going to get better. It's not going to be better in month 2 than it was in week 2. It's going to be worse. So the idea and one of the changes we made was to really to place an additional level of accountability on the part of students to ensure that they were seeking opportunities early and often to close those gaps, but also not unlike we ask of students to take, and that's through mandatory extra help sessions, but also not unlike we do with AP coursework, to require students to engage in some degree of summer reinforcement work to close those gaps, maybe not entirely, but to a greater extent so that that work that needs to be done early on in the year is far more feasible, right? Because what was occurring was student was coming in with a lack of prerequisite skills. And then sort of the default conclusion at times was, well, the teacher's not helping my child, or the teacher's not. And the reality of it is at what point in time does it become a disservice to the other students in the class who are ready to soar? We can only hold back so often. So we felt that this served 2 purposes. One, it really was a way for students who were waving in to demonstrate a commitment to taking on this challenge, but also more practically to give them opportunities to close gaps either before the school year started or shortly thereafter. And that was really the introduction of the summer work component, as well as the mandatory extra help sessions. Now, final point. You know, we did have a couple of parents reach out to us and say, well, you know, why does my child have to do this, right? They were good conversations, not coming oppositional, just questions. And when taking a closer look at that student's record, their data, their rubric that was filled out for placement, we said, you know what, this student was really close, right? And so this student may not necessarily need to do 6 extra help sessions, whereas getting a outreach from a parent where the student scored a 1 on a rubric out of 8 points and was requesting to waive into the class, that's obviously a student who we're going to want to do some significant summer work and also participate in those mandatory sessions, because that student is potentially going to encounter difficulties. So that's the thought process behind some of those new sort of requirements, if you will, that we think will actually ultimately be mutually beneficial to all.
Thank you, Scott. Bring it on, Sarika.
Right. Should we not have a little more stringent exclusion criteria where it's just 1? I mean, maybe 6 is okay or close enough. But if it's just 1, 2, maybe we can revisit that at some point.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that, you know, the waiver process went through, I think, some really, I would argue, some constructive adjustments this year. You know, just another example, Dr. Klor, is setting a deadline, right, for the submission of waivers, where, you know, you go to college, there's drop bad procedures. If you don't do them by a certain date, you're done, right? So we were getting rolling waivers throughout the summer, even up until the first day of school, which made it very difficult to balance classes and things of that nature. So we set a deadline of July 15th. We communicated that out many, many times. But you're absolutely right. And I think Dr. Irwin's in the audience. I'm sure she's probably made note of that. We could really have a cutoff, potentially a cutoff for that rubric. Like if you're below a certain number on the, that obviously something we could discuss and bring forward to the board for consideration.
Scott, can I ask a favor or a recommendation or a request for maybe next month or in the next couple weeks? If you could send the board, like, I know the waiver process because I remember being involved with it. There were four parts. Like if you wanted to get into honors math or honors English, there's a rubric, there's the grades from the previous year, there's the teacher recommendation, and I guess test scores or whatever else it is, standardized tests. It'd be nice that the rest of the board, if you guys haven't seen it, it'd be good to just see it. It's definitely changed over the years. I think it's gotten better. But it definitely, obviously, it's still, you know, if there's more things to be done to it. I mean, it was better before than we didn't even know there was a process out there. So at least it's identified and dealt with, and the parents know, hey, I don't go call Dr. Kokoda right away. There's a list of things I have to do before I call Mr. Kokoda, you know. So I think that'd be helpful if the board hasn't seen it, just so they understand it's a simple one-page document, I think, or a couple-page document.
Sure, and perhaps, we can bring that, we can add that to new business at the committee of the whole in September, and, we can share, all that information with the board, what our honors criteria are, our waiver processes, so you have all that information. Happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Have you guys
Miss-
looked at what, like the success rate of these students who've opted into these
Y-
courses?
yes.
Like what's the?
So that was going to be my next point. At our committee meetings, in CNI committee meetings prior, we actually did get some of the success stories of students who, wavered in and were highly successful in the class. And I think that those numbers are often good numbers to celebrate as well.
Absolutely, and certainly, in my treatment of those cases where prerequisite skills presented difficulties, I didn't mean to obscure the fact that, and as I stated at the beginning of my statement, obviously we encourage students to take on challenges. So that's actually good data we can bring forward at the next committee meeting, is some data relative to success, students who drop, right? We can certainly get, data from guidance in terms of the percentage of students that drop out of honors classes within the first couple of weeks. And that's okay. That's okay. You take a challenge, you encountered it, you said, okay, it wasn't for me. That's all right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So we're happy to bring that forward as well.
So I'm more with Dr. Kalor, where I think we need to pull back the reins. What I've heard is that, like, let's say in a given class, there are six sections of honors and only 3 of regular math, of which then, because of special ed numbers, they're all actually in class support. So like gone are the average classes. So now you have honors classes that are somewhat, and not in every case, but are somewhat diluted by waiver kids that cannot go and take off. And then you have the average kid that are now in class support classes that have to go at a slower pace than right? So somewhere along the line, the process has gotten so skewed. And I think that and that process in the past has started with 6th grade. And I think maybe it's even 5th grade now. I'm not sure, but what's crazy to me is I believe that since this has all started and basically the community has been given free rein and the numbers have exploded, that's where our drop in standardized testing, particularly in math at SATs, has happened. And I think it's our own doing as a board and as a school district, like those testing numbers, because people are missing the prerequisite skills. When you're in honors, I don't think what people realize is that you're taking 6th, 7th, in 6th and 7th, you are taking 3 years, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math and smushing it into grades 6 and 7. So you have to be moving quickly, because in 8th grade, when you're on the honors track, you're now taking 9th grade math. You're taking algebra 1 as an 8th grader. So you have to be moving rigorously. And I will tell you, I don't know where it's this whole thing of, in my opinion, where we don't trust the process. As parents, we're not trusting the school to do the right thing. And we're just, that my kid needs this. And it's this whole thing. And I will tell you, as a parent of now one very average student that graduated in 2019, I have an honors student in high school. I have a special ed student entering SATs who happens, as a special ed student, to have made it on her own into honors math. So she has no support going into, in 6th grade, now going into 7th grade in honors math. And that's as a special ed student, because the process works, right? It caught the fact that even though she's special ed, she is able to handle math on her own. And not to say that there aren't accommodations made by the staff to do some reading, or she has to do snap and read and, whatnot because of her reading difficulties. But, the process does work. And I think that we need to almost, pull back the reins, have it be more stringent so that those kids can soar. And on that topic, at some point at the high school level, we remove, like, when kids, there is a thing called advanced math. So I don't know, like, it's like crazy to me. So if you can't make it in honors, but we don't want you to feel bad and drop down to regular math, we've made up a course called advanced math that is for regular credit, but it's called advanced. So it moves a little bit faster, but again, now that's more teachers that we're paying to teach these extra courses. Just put them, can't everyone just be in regular math together? That's something that we should look at as well. That's my spiel.
So I have something to say here. I can see from both perspectives, both sides. So encourage kids take more challenges, motivate them to challenge themselves to learn more. And also some kids not that motivated, even they make it to the honor class, they may not really soar in that class. So as a school, we want to support both of sides of the students. I'm thinking also because there's a whole summer between, like if you say cut over July 16th, and then the school actually started September. Some kids may use this summer, do some class, they may already, it's quick if you learn. You can, not that difficult to catch up. So I would suggest maybe another solution, like, okay, we let the kids, if they want to challenge themselves, it's fine, get in class. The first week or second week, we do a standard test in the class, no matter you are opted in, waived in, or you are recommended by teachers. Everybody take this class. We see whether you're really ready for this class or not. It's fair. And if you whole summer you forget everything, you don't remember everything, which means you're not ready. Or whole summer you learn, now you are ready and you're ready.
But I think part of the process is they take a test to be able to get in to honors, into that honors. Like
when the test tested is May, right? Now we are talking about September. There's a difference in summer.
Yeah, I think what we're, we're trying to come at this, really trying to, I think, sort of lean into the parental education piece, right? Which is to say, really help that we're coming at this with the same interest, right? Which is we want your child to be successful, but we also need to have frank conversations about presently what might be impediments for your child to be successful at that level, and how those can be removed or mitigated prior or early on in the course in order that your child can be successful, but that there's a shared ownership for success, that you don't just simply wave in and then it's like, okay, teacher, move mountains and close those gaps and hit the high flyers. No, we are collectively and collaboratively working towards success, and that might involve some work over the summer. It might involve some work independently at the beginning of the school year. And we're happy, teachers happy to be there with you for those extra help sessions, happy to do it. But you need to be there yourself. You need to be invested, right? To me, that's really the conversation, is that shared ownership and shared responsibility to help them be successful when they get there.
I think this is a great step in the right direction. I just think that for the next year, we should go even further in revamping the process. That's just my opinion.
Scott, can you get numbers for next month? Like, I'm not really I remember a few years ago, what are the current numbers of opt-in, opt-out? Obviously, it's 7th through 11th grade, essentially. How many? That's right. It's 6. Yeah.
In other words, the number of waivers.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, where are we at? Where's,
Sure.
it's nice to just see where we're at
Absolutely.
today or whatever.
Can do that.
Because I don't know if it's a massive number or if it's, if it's just isolated at certain grades. Like I know obviously the biggest usually are the first few grades. Once kids get into 10th grade, 11th grade, they sort of know their track and the cadence, what they're doing. It's a matter of what APs and honors classes they have. So I think
Sure.
that'll be helpful. Are we dealing with 10 people or 50 people?
Absolutely. Can get that for you.
Thanks. Okay. Other old business I had was, and maybe if we wanted to go around the room to see, so we said we do the committee of the whole through September. I think September, right? Or was it
Up to
or was
September.
it through this to September? So this is pretty much here. And I think at least for the administration, for the respect of the administration, be helpful to let them know my thought would be either A, let's continue it through the end of the year, or we go back to committee structure now. So if you want to, we'll just do a straw poll, because I don't think it's something we vote on, but.
Committee of the
or
whole,
regular?
committee of the whole.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kim,
Committee of the whole.
Terrence?
Committee of the whole.
Well, I'm gonna stay committee of the whole as well. I talked about it before. I could go back and forth. I like the conversation. I do think there's some things that fall out, but I think we're getting better at it as the months go by. And I think, like Mr. Dowd said, I think it makes for more transparency, makes more opportunities for the public to actually listen and hear what we do. So I'm okay staying with it through the end of the year. So Miss Eileen down there.
Same, I'm kind of split. I think it works for some committees, and I think it doesn't work for others. So I'm pretty much on the fence line with that either way.
Linda? Okay.
I think subcommittee for maybe CNI and labor, because I feel that we didn't really do a deep dive into certain areas. And that's what I think. I think it committee as a whole for everything dilutes the understanding. There's so many topics that we are sort of superficially going over compared to when we had the subcommittee. At least the committees that I was in, I was able to look at everything much more in detail, which I miss out now.
Understood. Thank you. Jeff?
Committee of a whole.
Okay.
I think Eileen actually brought up a good point last week when she mentioned as a new board member, I guess putting yourself out on that stage is, I guess, potentially problematic. I mean, I've never been in a group where people throw out so many acronyms before, and I find myself trying to catch up all the time. Like, what are you talking about? But we're here to serve the public, and
Right.
I think it's important for the public to see us work, see the discussion, and vote for committee of the whole. Going forward.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, there you have it, Mr. Superintendent. Looks like we'll stay this structure throughout, so we can go from there.
Very good.
Any other old business? If not, we can move into new business.
Very briefly, I just want to put back on the radar, artificial intelligence. Everyone in the building knows it's a freight train. We're either on this train or we're under the train. Not for tonight, but I'd like to get a report back next month. What's the SOP for our educators? Can they use Chat GPT for their curriculum, for their lesson plans? If so, how so? The students, how is it integrated or not? And then specifically for curriculum, we need courses, my view, on AI. Specifically, not just incidental to a course. And I'll just leave it with the Google guy who ran Google X basically said he's both excited and petrified about where it's going. So I think the next generation really needs to master it to the extent possible in the areas where they're interested in it. But again, it's a freight train, we're either on it or under it. And I'd like to, not tonight, but I'd like to really get a deep dive on the SOPs for staff and students and coursework by next month, if possible.
Thank you, Terrence. Any new business?
I just want to make a request for next week's or the next committee of the whole, not next week. Can we discuss the upcoming health curriculum for the 23-24? I made a comment that last meeting or via email to the board and the administration that I'm hopeful the board will play a bigger role in writing the curriculum. Is it written already, the health curriculum? Because the opt-in, opt-out will happen next year, right?
We can be prepared for the next meeting to share some updates for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And I would hope that the board will share their feelings as well. I just want to put it out there that what we receive from the state are guidelines, and it's up to us to determine what we want to put in the curriculum for our community. That's the way I see it. And I'm hopeful that we could discuss it further and tighten it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right. So no more new business. So it brings us to the questions or comments from the public. I see Mr. Dowd. Yes, sir.
Sean T. Dowd, 12 Primrose Court. Longtime listener, second time caller tonight. I just wanted to reiterate my comments from earlier during the action items only comment section. The minute I sat down, a few people texted me and said, "What did you say?" Because I guess they heard the first few seconds of my comments and then it got cut off. So the definition of irony when talking about controversial topics. I just wanted to reiterate for the public that might be watching at home or watching the video feed later. My comments pretty much concerned in a continuing of the first reading, second reading, finalizing the policy specifically for controversial issues. think it was 2240, 2250, that the board administration just maybe specify for the public, for parents, for staff members, also to just specify what is considered controversial issues. So everything's on the table. So everything's transparent. And I did wanted to kind of just dovetail on some of the last comments made regarding, and Mr. Reddy was kind enough to call me an honors teacher. And I'll be honest, because I've spoken to a few board members and I've written to the board before, I haven't taught honors for the last few years. And I taught honors at different levels at the middle school and high school for a number of years. I got burnt out, and a lot of it had to do with students that were either waving into honors, being in honors. And I teach what I teach at what level I teach, and I try to scaffold all the students as a teacher when I can every day. The number of students that needed handholding, that needed super scaffolding. The last year I taught honors, I spent an inordinate amount of time talking kids off the ledge that were just stressed out because they weren't keeping up, talking parents off the ledge, hearing, and I've got a thick skin, but hearing that I don't know how to teach honors, I'm too challenging, when I hadn't really changed anything from years prior. And as a staff member, as a teacher who's trying to give the same service to all the students, I felt like I was getting burnt out. And I wasn't doing all my student service because I was catering to a lot of students who, and it was all about the grade. And like the AP issues that I've discussed with you, it's coming top down. These kids want strong resumes. They want to get into good colleges, put some APs on there, get honors classes. And then the schools don't take these AP classes. They're taking less and less. It's not as much of an advantage to them. And I just see them every year, kids taking 4 and 5 AP classes getting stressed out. And sometimes, depending on who you know, and we've had a lot of change in administration over the years, sometimes people tug ears and grades get changed because you knew somebody and sort of, things changed. And I don't think that's fair to all my students when just because you know somebody that was able to administer that. So I'm just going to be very frank about that. I've seen that happen in my class. I know it's happened in other classes. So as far as that goes, that's a reason. And I can't speak for all staff, but I know people that do teach the higher classes, it can be stressful because you want to keep the rigor, and you do want any child that wants to take that AP or honors class, you'd like to see them succeed, but come and learn. And I keep talking to the board about that when we talk about, encouraging AP, learn. I know the grade is important. I loved getting A's and B's too, but come and learn, because nobody's going to ask you at your first job, what did you get in AP, whatever, in junior or high school? They're going to ask you what you learned. So I just want to kind of leave that with you again. Thank you.
Board President, I just ask, I just wanted to make it clear, did I hear that grades are being changed? Is it because parents are demanding grade changes that they're not eligible for? What did I just hear?
You might have heard that, yes.
I'd like to expand on that. If
Yeah.
parents are able to demand from their teachers changes
I
in
hope that's not
grades,
the
I'd like to
case.
understand how that's processed.
Well, I can, yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to, I wanted to state that obviously as the superintendent of schools. I can tell you that
A big long line for that.
that is most certainly, well, that is most certainly not occurring under my watch. I learned early on in my leadership career, and not by trial and error, just but through mentors, that one thing you absolutely do not do as an administrator is go near a teacher grade book. Teachers' grades are legal record. And if as an administrator, you're party to an involuntary grade change on the part of a teacher, you're in a position where you could lose your license. So I could tell you that will absolutely not happen under my watch. Whether it happened in the past, obviously I can't vouch for it, but it will not happen under
And
my
this
watch.
would be executive session, but I would like absolutely at the next executive session, an understanding of any administrator who has gone in, if so, and changed any grade without the teacher's support. Because I think that would go to the Monmouth County Superintendent for an investigation if that happened. Am I off base?
Not really sure, Mr. Wall, how anybody would know that. You'd have to get
Okay,
some
well,
information.
I
on
think that is, thank you for that comment. I think that should be fully investigated, and we should loop in the Monmouth County Superintendent on that.
Well, all right. That concludes our meeting for tonight. Unless there's anything else, I want to thank everyone's attention. I'm not sure how many people we have online, but we are good. We don't have to go into executive session. So everyone have a good start of the school year. Football team, which is usually a big thing, they play next Friday down, or they play this Friday, tomorrow, down at Tom's River. So good luck to them, and have a nice night, everyone.